Hello, and welcome to another episode of The Profit Builder. My name is Vicki Suter, and I'm your host. And in today's video, we're continuing our series on how to plug the profit leaks in your contracting business. And we're focusing specifically on the field production side. And we're going to talk about what are some of the key places where profits tend to leak out of your business in that area and what you can do in order to plug those leaks. And I'm sharing with you an interview that I did with Tom Houghton of Round Peg Solutions, who is been working in the industry for a lot of years, and he is a system solution person. So he's worked with a lot of contractors on how do you create good systems to be able to have more control, increase the profitability and the effectiveness and efficiency of your team on the production side, and also assist in the whole ways that we communicate between the field and the office, between the client and the field, and really just create a better flow of information within your business. So I'm going to go ahead and share that video with you now, and we'll jump in. I am super excited to have my guest today, Tom Houghton with Round Peg Solutions with me. And today, Tom and I are going to be talking about production and how on the production side of your business, you can really start to increase the efficiency because, you know, Tom and I were talking the other day, it tends to be a place where profits leak out of your business. And we're going to talk about what are some ways that you can maybe plug those leaks and really start to have more efficiency in production. So before we jump in, because I have some questions I'm going to ask Tom, Tom, would you, first of all, thank you for being a guest on The Profit Builder. And would you just tell people a little bit about yourself? Give them a little bit of background about you.
Yeah, absolutely. First off, thank you so much for having me. I'm honored to be here. Excited to talk with you all today. So that's great. So I'm Tom Houghton. I'm based in Omaha, Nebraska, and I help construction companies all over the globe with their technology implementation. So getting technology into their company and helping them make the most out of it because it's something that we all use. And in order to be successful in this business, you need using it and using it well. And so I help out with that.
Awesome. Thank you. And I think Tom's being a little bit modest. I appreciate what you said, but all over the globe, but he's like got a deep experience in really how to have that technology be a way to create more efficiency on the production side of things. You know, one of the things you and I were talking about yesterday was the fact that for contractors, there are so many things that there's just so many moving pieces, right? And there's so much detail and there's so much information, and trying to like wrangle that and manage it and keep it all in one place is sometimes very challenging. And there's so many technology solutions out there these days that people say, you know, I really want to be able to get this technology or like make, you know, have this be automated or get something that's a better communication tool. And I'm hearing that a lot from people, you know, especially recently. And it's difficult for people to just know what's the best solution, but also how to get that whole, you know, we're not going to talk about software solutions specifically today, but what we are going to talk about, right, is like, how do you get that implemented and what are the kind of problems that it can really solve and how can it really help production be more efficient? And you know, what I'd like to focus on is the three of the things that I see are really critical in terms of having jobs run smoothly, because we're in construction, right? It's all about on time, on budget, as promised. And in order to do that, there's three critical things that I see that if these get done consistently on the production side, they make a huge difference in terms of a project running smoothly, people being able to stay in front of what's coming next, that ability to be able to stay on track with budgeted hours or stay on track with what it was promised to the client. And the three things that I see are critical to that are the job handoff process, like from pre-production to production, from the estimating and sales team or the design team to the production team, like what's included, what's excluded, what, you know, what assumptions were made, what were the, you know, what were all of the like things that are beyond just like the scope of the project, but how did you think about it when you created that budget or that estimate and that contract, and what's
Yeah.
important for them to know. So that's one piece. And then the next piece being managing job hours and how critical it is to manage job hours against the budget in order
Yeah.
to make sure that you stay on budget. And labor is the most unpredictable and the most risk filled part of construction because it's the most difficult to manage and control, right? Like with a subcontractor, you have a fixed price. With
Yeah.
a material supplier, if you have a purchase order, you have a fixed price. But with labor, it's critical, right? To like manage
Yeah.
that. So how do you do that? And then the third piece is doing what I call the 2 week look ahead. So every
Mhm.
week looking up and going, all right, what's coming in the next 2 weeks? What's coming in the next 2 weeks?
Yeah.
And, all of those things require information, right? They require information. So what I want to
Yeah.
talk with you about is like this first one, which is, so there's so many pieces in terms of what goes into an estimate and a bid and so on and so forth, and trying to like wrangle all of those elements so that
Yeah.
they're in one place. So this is what I want to ask you about is, from your perspective, what do you see is a way for people to start to get their arms around, all right, how do you create a system where that can all exist and that can live, and maybe even to Tom, like speak about like how to make that transition easy, right? Because
Mhm. Yeah.
it feels a little daunting, right? Like we think about like,
Yeah.
creating a whole new process for doing something, and sometimes that can feel daunting. So you've worked with a lot of
Absolutely.
people in this area. So what do you suggest?
Yeah, thanks. You're correct. I do frequently hear like the pain point between pre-production and production, between like the office and the field is another way to look at it. And with all this information from the estimating and sales process, you want to make sure that that gets across to the other side of the line there, as easily as you said. Like you want to make it easy for everybody. So one thing that I see in the companies that I work with, and one that I recommend frequently, is making sure that there is that kind of like handover process in a meeting. And so usually that can happen, at the office or on the job site. Most people are surprised to hear, right? Like if they do on the job site, it's like, well, how do I have all the information, right? And this is again back where I'm a big fan of technology and how it can help your business. And so if we have all that information in a technology platform, we can have it wherever we're at. We could have the office, on Mars, or we could have the meeting on Mars if we wanted to, and still be able to see all of the information about the job site and about the project that we're working on. So having a meeting, a dedicated time where you take the information from the pre-production side to the production side is crucial because you have all heads kind of together in one spot. And then, like I said, and like you said too, the information is the most important part of that meeting, and making sure it's clearly documented and that understands what they need to do in order to get the work done. And this is again where a software tool would be a huge help, not only in like running an efficient meeting, but making sure that you have your scope of work and materials laid out, like a material list, in case you need to procure anything else, or where are the selections at for this project. Having all of that information in one location saves time. The biggest aspect of this, too, that I see all the time is it eliminates the questions, right? It eliminates the phone calls that you get from your team where they're like, hey, what about this? Or when is this happening? Or where is that going? And all of that. It's like, no, no, no. Just check the software platform because it has all the information in there. And again, part of the catch, and I'm sure we'll talk about this a little bit more in length, which is, you got to make sure the information is in there to begin with.
Yeah.
So if the information is not there, you're not going to have a productive conversation. So that's part of that process of setting up production for success, is making sure we've got a process in place to get the information that they need into the system in order to have that productive conversation.
Yeah. So there's a couple things I heard, and then I have another question about what you said. So, one of them is have a dedicated time and a plan, which I'm totally in agreement with, about when and how you're going to have a job handoff process,
Yeah.
and have a process to it, like a checklist, right? Where,
Yeah.
you go through some number of things. and have all the information related to that project in a central place, in a central software package where you can
Yeah.
access that. So construction management software packages, they've become very popular, much more popular in the last 5 years, I'd say, or 6 years, where I just like
Yeah.
see more and more companies that have really embraced that technology.
Yeah.
And I know that you know this, that it's challenging for smaller contractors sometimes to make that transition. So,
Yeah.
what advice would you have to somebody? Because I think, part of what we're talking about here is there's a lot of people like intellectually know that, like, right? They go, yeah,
Right.
I should have that. I should do that.
Yeah. Yeah.
And the idea of transitioning to an automated software package can sometimes feel a little bit daunting. How would
Absolutely.
you recommend, like you worked with a number of people, when you think about the most successful transitions that you've seen in
Mhm.
businesses where they're going to an automated system, what would you recommend as how they approach doing that? And
Yeah.
what's the strategy
Yeah.
that is most effective in making that transition?
Sure. Fair. Yeah. Great. Great question. It's something I see all the time. It's actually the reason why I got into this business doing what I'm doing, because I saw it firsthand, saw the pain of people trying to implement these kind of off the box solutions and like kind of integrate them into their company, right? And so that's the pain point is like, how do I take this thing, which was made for everybody, and make it for us? Like, how do we translate that to our business? And truthfully, one of the things I see, we kind of talked about this already, is sometimes people are just not using the right product, frankly. I mean, there's kind of no other way to put it, right? That, they were sold something or they saw something shiny. And so they're like, well, buy that and we'll implement this technology. And it's just truthfully just not the right fit for them. And I've seen this firsthand, like I said, companies that have been using software for years, and it's been the continual uphill battle of trying to get it into their business and make it the most effective for them. And they can't do it just because it's not the right fit. And sometimes, you need some outside opinion, outside voice to say like, hey, this isn't, let's take a look at what you're doing. Here's this, that, right? And then say, this actually isn't the right spot for you. There's another solution that's probably a better fit for you and the company. And so that's what I work with a lot of companies, specifically on is finding that fit and making sure that they're using this stuff again to the fullest because this software isn't cheap. I think
Yeah.
anyone
So
watching this
give
would
us an
agree.
example of, like, I don't know, maybe a handful of questions that somebody can be asking themselves about
Yeah,
a solution, or how to go about starting to select a solution. Like,
yeah,
give us some questions that someone might ask themselves or ask that provider.
yeah. So the first question is, if I've been using this software for more than a year and I'm still struggling to feel like I'm getting traction in it, that should be a red flag that, if we're having to continually meet with, support or something like that to solve problems that were occurring on like a regular basis, that should be a red flag in your business. Because again, I'm really big
That's
on
after you
ROI.
purchased it though, right? So let's talk
Yeah.
about, there's
Oh,
people
before.
listening
Yeah.
to this
So,
video, right? Like, who
yeah.
are like, yep, I get it. I need to find a better system for managing all that
Yeah.
information, right? So that it gets into a central place, so that when it goes into production, my production team has all the details that they need, and that we have
Yeah.
a place to coordinate and communicate, as well as with clients, right? How do
Mhm.
they, like, what are those set of questions that they can be asking to make the right decision, so they don't get a year down the road, right? And
Yeah.
find out, yeah, I'm having to call tech too much. So
Yeah.
what are the questions they want to ask themselves, or
Yeah.
the advisor?
The first question I would say is to take a look at your processes. So, like specifically in production process, right? So, like, how are you currently scheduling your jobs? And are you tracking things? How are you tracking time, right? Things like, labor hours. And, how are we tracking where materials are coming from or where they're going? So, kind of and doing an initial like inward look to your current existing processes, because then when you go out and try and see, the different options that are out there, you'll immediately start to feel like a connection potentially with one of these. Because again, there are a lot of different options
Yeah.
out there now, which is great for the consumer, but it also can be super overwhelming. So
Yeah.
first question is take a look at your inward process. Second part of that is how does my process integrate with one of these companies? And so that's again like part of that question is, what do they offer? What does this package offer? Get a demo of the software to see how it works. But the last part of that is truly to have like a team conversation about this. Because sometimes as business owners, right, we think, okay, this is what's gonna, solve the issue for the team, and we go get it because we're, activating on that. And then we're like, okay, team, this is what we got. And everyone's like, wait, this isn't what we were hoping to solve here. So I definitely recommend bringing team buy-in, early on. And so like the teams that I see most successful with this kind of software implementation, it's multiple people having the conversation and the voice in the room to say like, this is the problems we're facing. And again, communication's a huge part of that, right?
Yeah.
So
Yeah.
are
I
you
really
hearing
appreciate,
from
go, I'm
homeowners?
sorry, go ahead.
It's okay. I was just gonna say, are you hearing from your homeowners like, hey, we didn't know about this, or we've got questions about that, right? And so the communication, not only with homeowners, but with the team is a huge aspect of all of these softwares too. So
Yeah, yeah. So part of what I hear you saying in terms of like considering any solution is first to look at what's our existing processes and how does the software manage those processes. And
yeah,
then to look at how does the software sort of function and does it make sense given how we function and what we do. Like even
yep,
when you just said that, I thought, oh, that's totally having first figured out and looked at your own processes and then looking at it from the software perspective. Sometimes the software is going to offer this solution that is like way beyond where you're ready for,
yeah,
and it can be overwhelming and daunting. So I
yeah,
think that's great. And then the third one, clearly like huge, right? Get buy-in with your team so
yeah,
that when you embark on this transition within your business, that getting that buy-in before you ever make the investment is huge in terms of having people embrace change. Because as human beings, we fundamentally don't like change. And we mostly like change, will embark on change because there's a problem, there's a reoccurring, there's some major problem that's occurred, there's a
yeah,
reoccurring down or pain point, or there's a highly desired state that's unfulfilled, which has a level of pain to it. So it's always, at some level, it's pain that
yep,
generates or discomfort that generates us embarking on change. So the
yeah,
more I would just kind of even add to what you said, which is the more that when we look at any kind of solution or making some change or implementing some change in your business with your team, that having a conversation about what's the problem that solves, right?
yeah,
And
hmm,
and I'm sure you've seen this a lot. Like I know so many times I hear the frustration from the production side of things, where the
yep,
production team isn't getting all the information they need. They feel like, you want me to manage to a budget, but I'm not quite, like I don't have all the clarity about it. And what happens is the production team, like they put down their head, they work really hard, and they hope that it all turns out. So
yeah,
not having a way to give them good feedback before a job starts, and then as the job is going on, right, when we talk about tracking job hours, which
yeah,
I'm going to talk about in just a second, because I want to
yeah,
I want to explore that topic with you. But that whole thing of having good information, it solves a problem to ultimately make their life easier,
yep,
so that they're not having to hope and wish that things turn out, or feel like they're blindsided when somebody goes, hey, you're running over on job hours, or that they feel like they show up to the job and all the materials aren't there, and you got
yeah,
sitting around waiting for the next thing that's going to happen, while the most expensive guy on your crew driving your truck goes to the supply store. Like that's how,
yeah,
those are the real day in and day out problems that show up, that
yep,
you know um that having a better communication system, as you say, right, can really
Yeah.
help resolve some of those issues. And in a place where there's just better communication about what has to happen when, and which gets to the 2 week look ahead, right? If you're doing 2 week look aheads, that
Yeah.
problem won't exist because you know what you need to have when you need to have it. But again,
Yeah.
it requires
Absolutely.
information, right? It requires feedback.
It
And
does. Yeah.
feedback is really the key to any software, right? Even if you're talking about your accounting software, your job management software, like the idea is that it makes it easier to get information in, because if it's in a centralized place, it's easier to get out. Like that's the whole
Yeah.
thing about software, as opposed to pieces of paper. Pieces of paper are much harder, to
Yeah.
track and to manage against. Whereas if you have information in a database, that's always available easily at your
Yeah.
fingertips. So let's
Yeah.
talk
I
about
frequently say, yeah. Oh, I was just
what.
gonna say, I frequently say this can only exist in one location at a time,
Yes.
whereas the information on here can be anywhere at any given moment at any given time, right?
Yeah.
So,
Yeah. Yeah.
um,
Yeah.
yeah,
So let's talk about like when we talk about job hours and tracking job hours, which is sort of the other, key piece that is critical for on time, on budget as promised.
yeah,
And how do you see that is a way to get people to start to automate that process in their business? Because this is there's
yeah,
a tough transition for people to make. What do you see has been a way that people have done this that makes it easier? What's the key to getting team to buy in? What's your thought
yeah.
about that? What do you see as
Great.
well?
Yeah, great question. So, again, step one, we've had that production meeting to set those expectations, right? Because that's something I frequently see and hear from the guys in the field, which is like, I didn't know how long, we only budgeted 20 hours for this and I'm at 40 hours, but I didn't know that, right? So if we have that clear communication from the beginning, we've had those expectations set, now we got to track them, right? And the best way to track them again is through technology. And that's something else to consider as the people who are watching this video are considering all of this is frequently the people in the office are the ones making the decision on what software we're implementing, but the people in the field are really going to move the needle on that usage, right? Because we got to get that data. So pro tip, when you're checking out a software, make sure you know how the people in the field are going to use that on a different size screen, like on an iPhone or an iPad, what have you. Because most of us in the office are working on a computer and we've got lots of screen real estate, and so we can see all this stuff. So how can we do that? So when we go to the field and we're tracking time, though, a lot of these softwares have great time tracking things. So specifically using like the GPS in your phone in order to track location to make sure we're tracking information to the correct job. So like automatically populating with, so if I show up at, the Tom's job, right? Like it's at Tom's house and I've logged it in here on my phone automatically. Like I didn't have to, do
Well,
anything
that's
extra.
brilliant. So it'll
Yeah. So
actually, so if somebody's tracking their time at the job site as opposed to Friday afternoon when they're having a beer with their buddies once a week.
yeah,
Um,
yeah,
um,
it's a good time. We got to
yeah,
do
that's
it. Yeah.
time card fiction. But
Yep.
but it'll automatically pick up the location if people are tracking their time on their
Yeah.
phone, on their device.
Yeah.
That's great. And I love what you said is like, look at it on a device, right? And see how that interface works for the user and not
Yeah.
on this like big screen at the office. Love that. So go ahead.
Yeah. Yeah. So, again, when I'm looking at technology solutions, I want things to be simple, right? So things like having that automatic location is one of them. There are some softwares that will actually, not to get too technical, they can put like a geo fence, what's called a geo fence, which is basically just like a circle around a location. And as soon as your device gets inside that circle, it'll automatically clock you in. So you don't even have to think about it.
Wow.
So that's pretty exciting that there are some tools that do that. But lots of great features of this, being able to automatically clock back in after a break, right? So everybody, might need to take a break due to like state laws or what have you. So, something I hear all the time, like our team forgets to clock in after the break. Well, if you have a set break schedule, it's 30 minutes, they, the tools that, that are available, you can clock, say you're on break, the timer starts for 30 minutes and then it automatically clocks you back in. It's one less thing for your team to have to think about when they're out in the field. So that's super handy. The other thing from like a financial perspective, of course, if we're tracking this, which is part of the reason why I want to track the labors is to protect the financials of the project, um, is that you can track, what you're doing on the job site on a device, right? So today we're doing framing. So I can clock into a framing labor, or I can, if I'm just doing, project management or something like that, it can hit different line items in your budget. And so that way you can make sure, again, that we're constantly tracking in real time the financial status of your job, all from, just asking people. What I typically tell teams, because I hear this all the time from the field crew, like, oh, I don't want to have to do that, right? But it's like, okay, let's make it as simple as possible. And here's the pitch. You take 10 seconds to do something that will save us 10 minutes in the future, right? Because if they forget to clock in, or if they're doing manual timesheets or something like that, there's always questions back and forth. So minutes are lost every pay period because somebody forgot to do something, versus using a technology platform to handle that for you. You're going to save a lot of time and money, therefore, just by having it kind of automated as part of the process.
Nice. Okay. And if I'm so those are some great like aha moments for me as I was listening to you, because I'm like, oh, that technology has actually advanced much more than I even realized. So that's really cool. So
Yeah.
it makes it easier for people, but there's still this like, the guy in the field or the gal in the
Yeah.
field who
Yeah.
is swinging a hammer or, grabbing a paintbrush.
Yeah.
They don't think about dollars and cents so much in terms of how
Sure.
much money you're making on a job or not making on a job, or like, 10 minutes more to them if they don't have to deal with the struggle of, the whole technology thing. Like,
Yeah.
so what is you, and you spoke to this yesterday, so I just want you to talk about this a little bit more, like how to get buy-in.
Yeah.
Because I always think at the level of pain, and right, it
Hmm.
was what I said a little while ago, it's like there's a pain that motivates somebody. So I don't
Yeah.
think spending 10 minutes to fill out a time card from the employee's perspective is necessarily a pain point.
Sure.
It's an irritation to the office, no doubt, that back and forth, calling,
Yeah.
asking questions. I didn't get your time card, or chasing people for
Yeah.
it. Like, that's super frustrating. But
Yeah.
what is the thing that you've seen has really worked in terms of getting buy-in with the field?
Yeah, there's two things that really inhibit the adoption of stuff like this. So specifically with the field crew, um, so first is how, right? So a lot of it is technical understanding, right? So like, how do I actually clock in with my phone when I'm out in the field, right? So that's an easy hurdle to solve, right? Just through team training, boom, everyone knows how to clock in and clock out. They understand, great. But that doesn't make that person want to go out into the field and actually clock in and clock out. So
Right.
then they need the why, right? That's the important part. So you need both the how and the why in order for this to be successful. And a lot of that is just through a transparent conversation to say, when we track this stuff more accurately, that means then the dollars that we see are, down to the penny, versus just kind of like a guesstimate of like, yeah, profitable here because I think you guys did, this amount of work here or this, that, right? And or the thing, and again, the other catch to all this is that this is real-time data. I hear this a lot from people that, and this is again something to tell the team, right? That we're going to start tracking this stuff in real time, which means that we can pivot before we start losing money on a project. And that's helpful for the team to know, because if you start losing money on a project and you start losing money on all your jobs, well, your business probably isn't going to be in business for very long. And so explaining the why to the team, that we're doing this to be financially healthier, but we're also doing this to give a better experience to the homeowners. And that's, one of my biggest passions is, this industry, there's a lot of great people out there, and we can deliver an even better experience to the homeowner, that people want to work with us to build more beautiful homes and healthier homes and You know what I mean? So it's more than just something as small as tracking time can have a huge ripple in the budget and in the business as well. So showing that why to the team through transparency is crucial in my opinion.
Yeah.
So
Okay. Thank you. Thank you. And just
yeah,
listening to you, I think that there's something that I would add to that, which is when you talk about the why, actually talk about how it can be easier for them when they
yeah,
get used to the technology, right? Like how
yeah,
that, there's a why, which is, I'm going to be able to give you better feedback about where you stand with a job, or
yeah,
I hear this from production a lot, like there's pushback in terms of, I'm not getting enough hours in order to do things, right? So part of the why
right,
might be, listen, when we're tracking more accurately, I can use that information when projects are done so that I can estimate better, so that we can make sure that we have, the right number of hours.
yeah,
And I appreciate what you said about transparency, right? Like just being a little bit more transparent and investing that time and getting buy-in is
yeah,
really, technology is never a magic bullet to solve our
yeah.
problems, right?
It's so true.
Getting people
Yeah,
to have that set of practices, that muscle memory of using it. And I appreciate what you said about, when somebody's considering any technology, looking at what does the interface look like in terms of the user on their, device, how easy it to use, is there training that's included with it, and so on and so forth, like
yeah,
making sure that there's going to be the support for them
yeah.
to be able to have it be not complicated. And it sounds like a lot of the technology there available these days is better even than it used to be, which is great. So
Yeah.
feels it's a
And
little more automated and not just a device manual thing. So
yeah,
that's
yeah.
great.
And it keeps getting better. That's the other great part about it is that
Yeah,
there's a
yeah,
really good, healthy competition in this space. And really, end users are who's benefiting from this competition because
yeah,
the products just keep getting better. So we'll
yeah.
continue to see more advancements on this. So
I do love that about technology. So when we're
yeah,
talking about the second critical place where, the first thing we talked about was job handoff process and the ability
yeah,
to be able to have all that information and have communication in one place makes that a lot easier, having a formal process around it and having the information so that it can be easily accessible, critically important. Then we talked about tracking job hours and job hours compared to budget. And what's the way to be able to do that so that you can get real-time information so that it's reliable and accurate. And what you just shared with us was, how do we do that from a technology point of view? How do we get that technology in place for getting time tracked quickly and accurately on a daily basis? Because if someone's doing a time card once a week, that's fiction. It's
right.
not that. I can't even remember what I did yesterday, and I'm pretty detail oriented. So yeah. Um,
Yeah,
so having a system in place, an automated system, and part of the points you were making was, choose a system, in both of those cases, choose a system based on how do we function and does that support the way that we function or the way that we, and help us improve that functionality. And then
yeah,
secondly, getting buy-in on both counts, right? Like if you're implementing a new system, that buy-in and getting that agreement with your team about their being willing to participate, which is, very critical to having
yeah,
any system stick. You got to get buy-in and agreement. It's really important. Um,
yeah,
so and then, the third piece that I talked about is doing that 2 week look ahead, looking
yeah,
ahead and looking at every week what are the critical milestones that have to happen in the next 2 weeks, and
yeah,
whether that's, what materials have to be ordered, what subcontractors need to be, mobilized, what labor do I need, permits, milestones, client communications, like decisions that have to be made. So it's a
yeah,
and the more you have an automated system, like when I think about like everything we've just talked about, when you have a place where all that information exists, it becomes much easier to be able to do a 2 week look ahead and look ahead
Absolutely.
and ask the question, all right, what's in front of me? Because all
Mhm.
of this, the thing that I have discovered, and I'm sure you've seen this too, Tom, is when we're looking through the rear view mirror to determine where we've been, then
Mhm.
we can't do anything about it, right? We can't do anything about what's happened historically. And
Yeah.
we can only do something about what's in front of us. And having good feedback about what's happened historically, which is where having a good job costing system, knowing what our job hours are in real time, having clear idea of what everything is that's going on the job, what was promised, what was agreed to, and then having real time feedback that has us stop now and look up and go, what's coming in front of us, right?
Yeah.
I need good historical data in order to be able to see what's coming in front of us. And the more I have a process in place for looking at what's coming in front of me, the more control I can have over the end result, right? If I can
Yep.
see it, I can do something about it. If I can't see it,
Yeah.
I can't do anything about it. So part of what we're talking about today and what you're talking about in terms of automated systems, and I'm going to ask you to talk a little bit about the two programs that you work with, JobTread and BuilderTrend, in a second.
Yeah.
But the whole idea of having good feedback that lets you make better decisions. I always say the more
Mhm.
clarity we have, the more confidence we have, the more powerful
Absolutely.
decisions that we can make. And that
Yeah.
requires good information, right? And the more
Yeah.
real time that information is, the better we're able to do, so if we have a good job handoff process that's really clear and we know what was agreed on, what's included, what's excluded, and we have a communication tool with our team about all of those things, and then tracking job hours and job cost real time so that we can see where we are budget versus actual and looking at that every week. And then the 2 week look ahead, right? Takes like, where have we been? What do we
Yeah.
know about what the promises of the job? What's the schedule? Where should we be now? What are the milestones, right? And we didn't talk about schedule, but it's a critical piece to being able to do a 2 week
So,
look ahead. Like, we know like what we have to do, which the more automated the schedule is, the easier that is, right? Then we
yeah.
can look
Yeah.
ahead and go, all right, what needs to happen so that we're not just keeping our head down and dealing with what's in front of us, right? So many contractors I've worked with over the years that, when we start working together, there's a lot of people with their hair on fire, right? And we spend a lot of time talking about how do you lift up your head and look out and go, what's coming in front of me? What's coming in front of me? Like, the more you can do that, the more
Yeah.
clarity you have, the more confidence you have, the more powerful decisions you can make to drive the results of your projects to where you want them to be. Um,
Absolutely.
yeah, in good in
Yeah.
and the more you have good technology that's easy to use, right? The
Mhm.
more that can simplify that process. So you work with JobTread and BuilderTrend, right?
Yep.
Just give me like a high level of those softwares. Like, what
Okay.
do they do?
Like what they do, what they offer. So great question. So speaking specifically to both Buildertrend and JobTread, these softwares are really made to help you manage your projects well. But then they typically go a step further. A lot of these other ones too will help manage like financial parts of the project, and then homeowner communication and team communication. So they typically, I think they all kind of started to say like, how can we help make production easier for everyone and track it really well through the schedule or through time tracking? But then how can we add on these other pieces that, since it is kind of all one big project and there's lots of things to consider, a lot of these ones that do it really well touch in multiple different areas. So that way we can in real time see financially where we're at on a project, or in real time see, where we're at on schedule wise in a project. So not only just, scheduled for production, but also financials. And then homeowners can consistently communicate through this platform. And so that way you can avoid, this thing blowing up at, 12 o'clock at night or something from a homeowner who's angry because they haven't heard an update in, 3 weeks, right? We've all been there where we've had, I mean, homeowners can be challenging. So setting those expectations and using these platforms, that's what they were meant to do. And as long as you're using them well, I've seen companies just thrive on this. That this is another way I look at sustainability and growth for a company is, again, to the pen and paper thing, those can only be in one place at one time. You can't scale pen and paper, but you can scale technology as your team continues to grow and as you're able to do more things, it will help your business scale exponentially. So hopefully that gave you, I guess, a better insight into what the
Yeah.
platforms can do for the business.
Awesome. Thank you. Yeah. Let me ask you this. So job trend, builder trend, is there like a good, if you're kind of this size company, this might be a better solution. If you're this size company, this might be a better solution. Is there like
Yeah,
a, and when I say size, I'm talking about annual sales volume,
sure, absolutely.
or average
Great
job
question.
size or number of, yeah, like,
Yeah, great question. If you call any of these softwares and ask them, "Am I the right fit for you?" They're all going to say
yes.
yes.
That's why I'm asking you.
Yeah. So I personally believe there is no one size fits all. And that
Yeah.
everyone, everyone's situation is unique. And again, a huge part of that comes down to your existing processes. Because one of the things I see is people say, like, okay, we're an established company. Maybe we're doing, 25 million a year or something, doing some large custom home remodels. And so we see, the flashy, shiny object, and we're like, we're going to go tackle, we're going to bring that into the system. We're going to bring that into our process. Well, your process might be so different than what the software will allow. So that's something else I'll say as a pro tip. Some of these softwares are what I call more bendable to your process, and some don't, they break. And so it is a little more nuanced versus, size based. There are some great starter solutions. Depending on if your volume is a lot lower, you're obviously not going to want to spend thousands of dollars a year on a software. So the good news is there are some, cheaper softwares outside of the ones mentioned that you can use for really, really cheap, or even for free if you've got other subscriptions to other things. And so
Okay,
that's a
so
great
it's a
way to
little
kind of,
more complicated question than I thought.
yeah, yeah. You were hoping for, again, everyone's hoping for that magic silver bullet, right?
No,
And
it's
it, it,
good
it
though.
truly,
It's good. So you have a sense of like there's other options. Here are two key, ones that I support or I work with, but you
yeah,
also know more about other solutions and
yeah,
um so helping
yeah,
somebody identify what that is really sort of depends on the size of their business, how much they're looking to invest, where, what their
yeah,
current systems or processes and what maybe makes sense as a next step for them. I hear
yeah,
all that. That totally makes sense. Well,
yeah.
so to just sort of wrap this up, I mean, and then I'm going to ask, I know that you are, I'm going to ask you to share your information in just a second, but, part of like just to recap what we've talked about here today is that the critical places where production can really increase efficiency and really help you as a contractor stay on track with projects coming in on time, on budget as promised, being able to manage those three critical areas of having a really good job handoff process from, pre-production to production, tracking job hours against budget on a weekly basis and assessing, if there's adjustments that need to be made. And then the third place, doing 2-week look aheads in order to know and stay in front of what's in front of you. That the ability to be able to do that means that you have good information, you have good feedback systems. And the more automated those systems are so that it can give you real-time feedback, the more
Mhm.
efficient you're going to be able to be in production, the more powerful your ability is going to be to control outcomes on projects, to be able to see where you're headed, to be able to impact the future of those jobs. And Tom, thank you. I mean, I appreciate you sharing your perspective from a technology point of view, right? Like you're in there day in and day out working with people on creating the solution that helps them get that feedback in place in order to be able to do all those things.
Yeah.
I know that when you and I talked, you said you would be willing to, if somebody wants to get a demo
Yeah.
or have a conversation with you about what's maybe the best solution for them to help them
Yeah.
make a decision about what's the best technology solution as the next step, that you'd be willing to do
Mhm.
that. So can you just speak to that for a minute? And then would you tell people how to get a hold of you?
Absolutely. Yeah. If you want something that will help you and your business, please don't hesitate to reach out. You can obviously go to our website, roundpegsolutions.com, fill out the form there, and we'll be in touch to set up a time. If you want to talk about, like you said, Vicky, if this is the software solution working for you, like is it the right one, or you're considering a software solution and you're not really sure. Usually, with my experience, because again, I've worked with all of these major softwares, all the major players in the space. I can usually deduce this pretty quickly for my clients to say like, yeah, this is the one you should use, and that'd be the good fit for you. So happy to do that for you and your audience here. Feel free to reach out. Again, you can go to the website, or you can go. You can probably put a link to my email. It's just tom@roundpegsolutions.com. So you can reach out via email if you'd like as
Sure.
well. So
Thank you, Tom. I appreciate it. Thank you so much.
no
Thanks
problem.
for being a guest and sharing your expertise with us today. Go check out Tom's offer, reach out to him, and see either A, what's a good solution, technology solution for you and your business where you're at now, or maybe how to improve the technology solutions that you have in place, or maybe even like just how to get more buy-in with your team on getting the technology solution that you have to actually be used. So Tom, thank you again for being a guest today, and for everybody watching and listening, thanks, and I'll see you next time on The Profit Builder. I hope you got some great ideas out of today's interview with Tom, and that you maybe found some ideas that would help you plug some of those profit leaks in the production side of your business. And I encourage you to reach out to Tom and get a demo of his software, or just have a conversation with him about maybe what are some ways to get more buy-in with your team in order to implement some of the changes that you need to have to get more consistent results, better communication, and increase the efficiency on the production side of your business. And next week, we're going to be launching into the next part of our series, and that will be about how do you get good feedback within the accounting side of your business. We're going to talk with, I have an interview with Diane Gilson with Info Plus Accounting. She is the premier expert on this topic, and Diane will be sharing with you some ideas and ways that you can have information flow more effectively and easily through your accounting system, some best practices that really will help you have better feedback that will allow you to run a more profitable contracting business. Make sure to watch next week's video, because you're going to get some great tips about how to plug the profit leaks in that part of your business as well. Thank you again for being here, and I look forward to seeing you then.